At the end of Season 1 of House of the Dragon, we saw Lucerys Valerian and his dragon get killed by Aemond. This episode ends with Rhaenyra finding out and having a look of vengeance on her face, as this death is really what officially begins the Dance of the Dragons. This Targaryen civil war is long, messy, and bloody, and there are a lot of vicious and devastating deaths for both sides. In this video, I'll go over some of the key deaths that happen in this war from what's known in the book. This should go without saying, but there are possible heavy TV show spoilers ahead. I'll start off with Jacaerys Valerian. His biggest accomplishment during the war is recruiting Cregan Stark to the Blacks. Jace is killed in what is known as the Battle of the Gullet. During this battle, his dragon, Virmax, is shot down by arrows. Because of this, he leaps off into the water and clings on to a burning, wrecked ship. Soon after, he is also shot down with arrows and sinks into the sea. Next up is Criston Cole. He dies in a battle known as the Butcher's Ball. He is shot with arrows by Robb Rivers and other unnamed archers. Robb Rivers is a bastard of House Blackwood and is known as the most skilled archer in Westeros at this time. He is last seen at the Battle of Tumbleton. It's unconfirmed if he was killed, but the battle was a victory for the Greens and he was not heard from since. Now we'll move on to Aegon Targaryen. In the war against Rhaenyra, he technically wins, if that's what you want to call it, but at the end of the day, even though he did defeat her, he did not exactly come out on top. He was a terrible king and everyone around him knew it. Even though Rhaenyra was gone, he had other enemies which he kind of ignored, and that led to his death. He's eventually found dead with blood around his lips, having been poisoned. It's never been 100% confirmed who did it, but Larys Strong and Corlys Velaryon are among the top suspects. Speaking of Larys Strong, we'll move on to his death next. After Aegon is assassinated, Cregan Stark comes to King's Landing. He rounds up many people with the potential chance of having involvement in the death. Most of the convicted suspects accept assignment to the Night's Watch to avoid death, but Larys opts for execution. So Cregan Stark beheads him with his sword Ice. Next up is Miseria. Now, even though it looked like she could have been killed last season, it's unlikely. She does serve an important role to the Blacks during the Civil War, so it will likely be confirmed that she lived next season. She acts as Rhaenyra's Mistress of Whispers, basically the equivalent of Larys Strong for the other side. Late in the war, when the Greens recapture King's Landing, many flee, including Rhaenyra, but Miseria stays behind. She's captured and is told that if she can walk through the streets of King's Landing naked while being whipped, she can live, but unfortunately, she does not. Joffrey Valerian is yet another one of Rhaenyra's kids that will die during this war. When a riot breaks out at King's Landing, he tries riding his mother's dragon. Unfortunately, that does not work out, and he falls 200 feet to his death. Next up, we'll talk about two characters, Aemond Targaryen and Daemon Targaryen. The battle between these two is definitely going to be one of the most anticipated moments of the series for those that know it's coming. They get into an epic battle on the dragons high above the God's Eye. Both dragons are heavily injured during this, and eventually Daemon leaps from his dragon and stabs Aemond through his good eye. This sends both dragons along with the riders crashing down into the river. Aemond and his dragon die and their bodies are found years later. Daemon's dragon is able to crawl to the shore, but dies shortly after, and Daemon's body is never found. Now, from one of the more tragic characters in this show, Helena Targaryen. She is known to be kind, gentle, and loved by the citizens of King's Landing, but unfortunately, she lives a tragic life. After the death of Lucerys, Daemon gets revenge by sending two assassins to kill one of her and Aegon's sons, a son for a son. It's an incident known as Blood and Cheese, and it is known as one of the more horrific events of this war. I have a separate video on it, but long story short, two assassins break in and force Helena to choose which son gets killed, and they kill the opposite one right in front of her. The surviving son doesn't last long after though, as he is killed trying to escape King's Landing. With two of her three kids dead, Helena drops into deep depression and eventually commits suicide by throwing herself from a castle window. Next up is Otto Hightower, a man many consider to be the main person responsible for this war. He, along with others, including Allison and Helena, are captured by the Blacks. Allison and Helena are kept alive as prisoners, but Otto is beheaded. Rhaenys Targaryen is next up, and she is killed in dragon battle. She rides her dragon to fight both Aegon and Aemond at the same time, and because she's outnumbered, both her and her dragon die. Next up is Allison Hightower, who survives the war, but doesn't exactly live the best or longest life afterward. She drops into depression, having lost all of her children, and spends her time mourning them. Eventually, there's a winter fever outbreak in Westeros, King's Landing gets hit really hard, and she is among the victims. Last up is the leader of the Blacks, Rhaenyra Targaryen. Now, her death has actually been talked about in Game of Thrones by Littlefinger. Anyway, she is driven from King's Landing during a riot as the Greens are taking back over. She knows it's over for her and tries to escape Westeros, but is captured by Aegon. She dies an agonizing death as Aegon feeds her to his dragon. Now that is how most of the key characters in the Dance of the Dragons meet their end. I'll also mention Corlys Velaryon does survive the war and eventually dies of natural causes at an old age. The Dance of the Dragons was a bloody and ruthless civil war and claimed many lives from both sides, and even those that survived, most didn't exactly go on to live the most luxurious lives. I'm very excited for the future of House of the Dragon and want to continue making videos for it, especially as we get closer to the second season. So if there's anything you want to know and any details you want to know of what we can expect, comment below, and thanks for watching.